Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Cause you can, and you don't stop. Cause you can, and you don't stop. Oh, when you can, and you don't stop. Mike D coming out the show. I got the brand new dude, guaranteed like you.
Yes, yes, yes. It's that day of the week and that time of the night on Late Night Sports Radio, ladies and gents. Welcome to the FantasyGreek.com's NFL Football Power Hour. I'm your host, Jim Keith. What happened there, Keith?
I felt like that needed a cheer.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that after the kind of day that I've had. Welcome, everybody, to the FantasyGreek.com's NFL Football Power Hour. I'm your host, Jim Sarantias of the FantasyGreek.com, and you just heard him sort of sit there and give salutations. We're with our producer from 87sportsfans.com, Keith Grieve, the lovely, intelligent one. Unfortunately, tonight, Steve Taylor is unable to join us, so we're gonna proceed without him with our special guest tonight. This week, in the first half of the show, we'll be talking NFL draft prospects, and in the second half, NFL free agency. Boy, we haven't been on since, last week, Keith?
Yeah, because someone decided to play dead.
Yeah, you know, I hated calling in sick or calling in a sick day. It's not my thing, but seems like something flu-like's been going around. My wife had it really bad. I had it not as bad, but still felt like crap.
It was funny because, Monday night I got your text. I was at the day job. It was my first day back after a week off from the day job, and I was so exhausted. I worked till 7 my time, which gives me usually a 2-hour window to start putting the show together. And I had nothing left in me. I couldn't put two coherent thoughts together in my head. I was a babbling idiot. So that's why I decided to cancel the show Monday night.
And that's different from you generally? How?
Yes, it was so much worse than normal.
Well, I'm glad I didn't get to see that because then I would have really lost respect for you.
Yeah, whatever little is left.
Well, you know what? We're back. That's all that matters, and we've got a pretty good show lined up for us. We've got Jim Weidner. God, Jim, why do I keep doing that? It's Jim Weidner from the FantasyGreek.com. No, you know, it's that
most of my friends still call me Weidner, so it doesn't bother me at all.
Well, you know what? With my last name, I try to be careful how I pronounce other people's last names because mine is constantly getting butchered. But it's Jim Weidner from the FantasyGreek.com. Jim covers the Packers, Vikings, and you've been dabbling in college football so far this season, doing a really nice job with all these player profiles. And I was hoping we'd have a second person, but you're going to be the man tonight. You, me, and Keith. How's that sound?
It sounds good to me. Just shoot away and we'll get it going.
All right, sounds good. Just a reminder to all our listeners out there, if you're listening live and you have any questions or comments, feel free to give us a call at 585-633-7487. That's 585-633-7487. Or if you're shy, tweet us at the Greeks hashtag AskTFG. That's hashtag AskTFG. And remember, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Keith is a great example of that, okay?
Oh my gosh, this is just so unruly.
You know, I have to give you a shot every once in a while just to make myself feel better, to be honest.
God.
I know. Well, we'll hug it up later. Anyway, let's get started and just jump right in. You know, Jim, one of the biggest sort of questions is this whole Jameis Winston versus Marcus Mariota, and it seems that people are settled on the idea that both are 1 and 2, number 1, number 2 in the draft in terms of just the quarterback position. Most people seem to be agreed upon Winston will go to the Buccaneers, even though the NFL Network the other night, or maybe it was the day after the Combine ended, I'm not sure about the timing of it, but there's some suggestion that Winston may not be all that he's claimed to be, which based on what I saw at the Combine, I don't buy that for a second. But after you get past Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, I think that number 3 quarterback position's pretty much up for grabs. So let's talk about that first before we talk about where you think Winston and Mariota could end up. Or actually, no, let's do it in reverse. Let's talk first about where you agree with me that Buccaneers take Winston at number 1.
I think they're going to have to. I mean, it sounds like they're trying to get rid of Mike Glennon. Josh McCown got released this offseason, so I think it's a necessity that, if you've got the bullet, you're going to have to take a quarterback if you don't have one. Unfortunately, this draft, the depth for quarterbacks, it's miserable. You look at number 1 and number 2. Winston, it has so many problems off the field, and Mariota, he's, there's a lot of questions about him because of the offense he came from. So, I mean, right now you're looking at quite a drop from even 1 to 2, and then from 2 to 3, I couldn't even tell you. I mean, I think the Bucs are going to have to. They need a quarterback, and they've got to hope this kid matures. I mean, it's just, the allegations aside, but, stealing crab legs and screaming obscenities at the student center, you hope it's just immaturity. But, I mean, he comes from a pro-style offense. He played under a very highly regarded offensive coach in Jimbo Fisher. So I think right now they're going to have to take him at that point.
And I'll tell you, at the Combine, he really did look like the real deal. I mean, he looked like a quarterback that could, obviously with some practice, be ready to go in week 1. He may not be the best quarterback in the world on that day, but he should be able to generate more offense than the Buccaneers were generating last season, especially with Vincent Jackson and Mike Davis in tow. Now, in terms of Mariota, I think there's some teams that, it's very much up in the air, and this assumes that the Titans don't sort of misdirect everybody and end up taking a quarterback at number 2. But I think that's true. I think the Titans will stick with who they have in Zach Mettenberger and probably go for the USC product with that second pick. So for Mariota, now for Mariota, we're looking at teams like the Jets, the Rams, the Texans, and maybe even those Eagles. For you, which team do you think ends up grabbing him?
It's funny that when you were talking, the first thing that jumped in my mind is the Eagles trading up and getting him, or trading in the middle of the round if he just keeps sliding. To me, it'd be amazing if the Jets grabbed him at number 6. I understand that, Isaac is gone and Rex Ryan is gone, but, you just spent first-round pick, Geno Smith was a second-round pick here, 2 years ago?
True. True.
And Sanchez wasn't that long ago that they took, how many years are you going to keep doing this until you figure it out? So to me, I think the fact that Chip Kelly knows this kid, understands him, he fits into that scheme. I think, I don't know if Mark Sanchez is going to be re-signed by the Eagles. I don't know if he's worth it. And to me, I think that would be where they trade up. That's the question. But right now, I think that would be the best fit.
Okay, so where they trade up is an issue. But let's just say it's one of the first top 10 picks, and here's the draft order in that top 10. Buccaneers, Titans, Jaguars, Raiders, Redskins, Jets, Bears, Falcons, Giants, Rams. Do you think they could get? Do you think they're going to have to go and trade with the Jets just to be certain that they get them?
Yeah, if some of these teams, like, even the Titans, I don't know how enamored they are with Leonard Williams. To me, it would be a smart thing if you're not high on anybody at that point, and it sounds like Chip Kelly is really high on Mariota. To me, you move down and you pick up a second maybe, and maybe a possible first next year. Out of those teams, I don't know where he fits. I really don't. I mean, I think, if the Jets want to trade with them, they should do that. I mean, they've got a new general manager who came over from Houston. You brought up Houston might have an interest in him, but is he a fit into an offense that Bill O'Brien's going to run? And he seems, high on Ryan Mallett. Good luck to him, but I mean that's to me that would be, that would be the only one that I could see having any type of interest after, if Mariota doesn't go one, which it doesn't sound like he will, and or the Eagles trade up. I mean I'm not big into projecting trades in the top 10, but for him, I would think, now you just got to wonder who wants to move out of that spot. And most of the time it happens on draft day, and that the first round coverage, you always see, there's who just has zero interest in making a pick. Usually it's the Packers with Thompson, but I don't know. I really think that the Eagles is going to have to be the landing spot for him if he, unless he's going to start sliding. And then, what selection does Houston have? Do you know, Jim?
Oh, Houston, yeah. Houston's number 16. I would really be surprised if Mariota's still on the board, but I guess you never know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like Tennessee is high on Zach Mettenberger, so, that's a possibility. Or, what are the Rams going to do? You keep hearing that Sam Bradford's going to be traded possibly, and he can't stay healthy. So do they finally take another quarterback and admit that Bradford just can't stay healthy?
So maybe the Rams move up.
Yeah, it's funny that you guys are talking about this because I was actually thinking about this earlier today, because that number 2 spot, the Titans their phone is probably going to be ringing off the hook between the Jets, Eagles, Texans, and Rams. You've got 4 franchises that desperately need a quarterback. And if everybody other than the Jets, if they're nervous that he's not going to get past the Jets, then people might be calling to trade up to get ahead of them.
Yeah.
So it'll be. I think that's going to be a spot that if there's going to be a trade in the first round, that'll be the first one of the day. And Tennessee should be able to net a huge gain out of that.
I just, in Keith, I think you've hit something on the head here. I mean, me personally, I thought, the Titans aren't going to go quarterback, and everybody should be able to see that in the tea leaves. But yet, I think you're right that if you really want to be certain, you don't focus in on the Jets. You focus even deeper in and get to number 2, and just if you want, this is what you really want, you need to be sure of it. Now, would you guys give up 2 firsts and 2 seconds in order to get Mariota?
I wouldn't, but he might turn out to be a really good. There's so many questions that are you going to risk that? I mean,
I think before the combine there were fewer teams that were willing to do that, but he hit all of his throws dead on. And what everyone was talking about, I'm not going to try to play analyst here, but all the analysts were really impressed with Mariota's footwork, which was a major question mark coming out of that offense in Oregon. So I think you might have some teams that would be willing to pay that price because they believe that he's got all the tools to be successful down the road.
That's interesting. My personal opinion, I know when people talk about what a pick is worth, and if Mariota is really the future of the franchise, you might say two 1s and 2 2s are worth it. But boy, that is a lot to give up for one player that you're really sort of rolling the dice on in terms of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I, as a general manager, I would hesitate. Really, really hesitate to give up 2 firsts and a second. I think it'd be fine to give up a first and a second for this year, but a first for next year, I would really hesitate about that. But I might consider giving up a second. Sure.
But
I think the big one is when you bring that up, who's going to risk that? I think the obvious answer is the Eagles with Chip Kelly. Now it sounds like he's controlling personnel. I think he'd pull the trigger and do it because the fact that. Mariota comes from his system, understands it, and he's high on him, or by reports is high on him. So he might. I mean, he seems kind of like a risk taker, and, he might actually trade that for him. So,
well, and another team that I think could do it just because they have the least to lose, I think, is the Texans. They don't have a whole lot of weak spots. That defense is good to go. And on offense, you've got some options at running back. You've got DeAndre Hopkins ready to take over for Andre Johnson when he's put out to pasture. Sure, they have needs, but there's nothing really that crucial. So I think the Texans could roll the dice a little bit more, just like the Eagles. I agree with the Eagles.
But that's all good stuff. I mean, this is stuff that as we get closer to draft day, obviously, we're really not going to know what's going to happen until it happens.
Right.
There'll be a lot of speculation. There'll be a lot of people talking about what should happen at that point and whether it falls that way. But, I mean, even last year, Keith, when we did that mock draft and then when we actually watched the draft live and did our live podcast, which I don't know about you, but I plan on doing that again.
Oh, yeah, no. We gotta nut that up.
Absolutely. There were a lot of surprises, a lot of things that teams looked at the situation and who they were picking at the time much differently than even what we would have thought of with 2 months to go until the draft.
Yeah.
So let's not get bogged down by the quarterbacks. Let's move on. We've got running backs, and we actually have quite a bit to talk about the running backs. If there's one thing that I noticed from the Senior Bowl specifically, this is a very deep class of running backs. There are running backs ranked outside the top 10 that were three-down running backs in their college programs that played well in their college programs, that were very productive in their college programs, and could even block in their college programs. I was very, very impressed with some of these running backs, what I saw at the Senior Bowl, what I've seen of most of these guys on tape. So let's just jump right in right there. I think we can agree Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley are 1 and 2, with Gurley being a player that actually might be ready, maybe not on week 1, but shortly thereafter, based on some of the more recent reports about the recovery from his injury. But now we've got a group following up right behind. And Jim, I'd like to get your thoughts on some of these guys. And why don't we just start off with Tevin Coleman out of Indiana?
I wrote a post on him. Interesting back, played for a very
and where did you write the post, Jim?
On the fantasygreek.com.
All right.
He rushed for over 2,000 yards, played in, like I was saying, a very non-powerhouse football university in Indiana. Played in a spread offense. Kevin Wilson came over from Oklahoma, the head coach at Indiana, and brought a spread offense. But they were more of a running team this year, and obviously they should have been because Coleman was pretty much their offense. So I think he rushed for over 2,000. I think it was 2,036 yards. 7.5 yards per carry. Just a big kid, 6'1", over 200 pounds. I did a little research. He ran 5.5, I think, in the 40, which, for the guys that get enamored with the 40 time, that's great. But, he's a bigger back. I caught some balls out of the backfield and might be a nice round draft pick for somebody like the Falcons who need, if they don't spend a high draft pick, which they shouldn't because they're defensive needs, but might in the later rounds might turn out to be a pretty good player.
Yeah, he's a kid that shows a lot of promise, and I think you hit it in your article. He's on a team that, they're running the football. It's not a secret. They're gonna give the football to him. And, there's several running backs that I suppose could fit that, but that's why this is such a deep running back class, in my opinion.
I think the impressive thing is, unlike Melvin Gordon, who's, Wisconsin's known for their big farm kids on the offensive line, Indiana didn't have any, even on the first or second Big Ten team, all Big Ten team, none of their linemen were on those two teams. So it proves that he's actually running behind maybe an offensive line that's not as good as Wisconsin. He's putting up huge numbers. So, if he can, then you have to ask the question, can he adapt to a pro-style offense, high formation or something like that? But, Chip Kelly has proved in the pros that you can run out of the spread, and Shady McCoy's done it the last 2 years that Kelly's been there. So, if he can show the hands, he could probably turn out to be a pretty good back.
Now, what about Nebraska's Amir Abdullah? Here's a guy who, in the Senior Bowl, he ended up being the most valuable player. Here's a guy that definitely comes from a team that doesn't really throw the football. What can you tell us about him?
Probably one of my favorite running backs to watch this year. Besides Melvin Gordon. is, 5'9", 200 pounds, or about 195, I think he's listed as. But a guy who, I think was over 4,500 yards career rushing, has some punt and kick return. He was a punt returner his freshman year, saw some time as a kick returner, but, everybody's enamored with size and stature and things like that. And, he is getting knocked down. He ran a 4.6 in the 40 at the combine, which, again, that's scouts are going to look at and think, oh, he's not as fast as he played at Nebraska, but he's a good hard runner. And the fact is he makes people miss. And again, when every game that Nebraska, nobody was scared of their passing offense. So the fact that he put up those types of numbers when people were, opposing defenses were locking up on him is pretty impressive. So the fact that, and I wrote again on .com about Abdullah that he's got, he probably will be drafted, you're looking 4th, 5th round. And, they anybody that's under 5'10", they call him a third down back, which is not in my opinion, but he could be a nice change of pace back, but he's a really good running back. I mean, yeah, he can catch the ball, but he can run the ball real well. Now, I think he coughed up the ball like 24 times while in Nebraska, which he's going to have to, change up when he gets into the pros. But, is he going to be, Nebraska has a long tradition of running backs. So is he going to be more of an Amon Green or, as Packer fans will know, this name, Brandon Jackson? So, you hope for the first guy than the second guy. But I like him. I think he's a good back. And, Big Ten was loaded this year with running backs. And the fact that he didn't stand out with what he did, that just shows how much depth they had at running back in the Big Ten this year.
Yeah, Amir Abdullah in the Senior Bowl touched the football 11 times. He rushed 7 times for, you guys are going to love this, 10.4 yards per carry. 10.4 yards. I mean, that's crazy.
That's Techno Bowl stats from
absolutely, and zero fumbles. I mean, if you want to put the fumbles on anything, it's the fact that he is running the football as much as he was in Nebraska and had nothing to do with these sorts of issues that one would be concerned about. He had 40 receiving yards in the game as well. I mean, to me, he's a prototypical 3-down back. He might need a little work, and you might question his durability. That's probably the biggest issue following running backs of that stature and size, whether they could last 16 games. But he's certainly a guy that can surprise, and he played that way his college career. So I guess we'll have to see.
Well, one of the benefits, too, is you talked about can he, take the pounding down for down. How many running backs currently, especially in the fantasy football game, you should know this, is the fact is how many are actually 3-down backs anymore? I mean, a lot of them split carries. I mean, that's, Eddie Lacy, Adrian Peterson, a lot of them have 1A, 1B now. I mean, that's their 1 and 1A. I mean, that's, so to be scared away from that, I wrote that in my post for him is the fact that, like, the Saints, that would be a great place for him, the way they, through the years have had a running back by committee. I mean, you just don't find that too much anymore in the NFL, that you have your Eric Dickersons or Barry Sanders or, just the one back that's going to get like 20, 25 carries a game. I mean, they split them all up now.
I think the reality is when we start to see a running back run the football 300 times is going to be a rarity going forward. However, to see a running back run the football 225 to 275 times, I think could become the norm. Is my belief, and I stand by this belief, something I expressed last season, is we should be seeing the shift back towards running backs because the winning teams showed you need a running back. You need a number one running back to lead your team. And if you're missing that, you're not going to make the playoffs, or there's a good chance you won't.
That's a great point with Marshawn Lynch. I totally forgot about him too. I mean, but he still had breaks with Turbin and Christian Michael, but still he was the main carrier, and you do need a running back to, the Patriots is another one that does a running back by committee. So it to get that far, you need a good running back. You just can't. I mean, the Packers had a couple years ago where, gosh, I can't even remember his name, and that's how bad it was. That they leaned on their passing game, and it bit them in the butt at the end. I mean, that's just, you got to have a running game right now.
Boy, that must have been painful.
Oh, it was a kid from Hawaii. I can't even remember his name. It was their top rusher. I mean, it was just, until Eddie Lacy came on 2 years ago, it was hard to watch. Even though they had James Starks rush for really well during the Super Bowl season in 2010, but he's very fragile now. So,
two guys I want to quickly get in before we cut to break. First one is David Johnson out of Northern Iowa. Jim, are you familiar with him?
Yeah, his name's been popping up quite a bit, and playing down in Cedar Falls, Iowa, I heard his name during the year. Big back, had production against Iowa State, and I think Iowa. You did a post on him too, and pretty big back and pretty fast too.
Oh, yeah, he kicked some butt. I know our good friend Dan Shanka over at Our Lads NFL Scouting Services is high on him. I'm high on him after what I saw in the Senior Bowl. He's a 6'1" running back, 224 pounds. And the way I describe him is he's the lankier version of Steven Jackson. His senior year, 222 carries for 1,286 yards. That's 5.8 yards per carry. He rushed for over 100 yards in 7 games, chipped in almost 400 yards receiving for a monstrous 1,679 yards. I don't know that he's necessarily in the top 10, but he's going to be a steal for some team, I think, personally, in the 3rd or 4th round. There's a good chance he falls that far, and if you're getting him then, I think teams would be drafting a starter. He just looks so good in the Senior Bowl. Besides Steven Jackson, he reminds me sort of Arian Foster. He's a silky runner. He doesn't look like he's running hard on his feet. I just love that about the kid, and that's why I'm high on him. And then my other running back is Cameron Artis-Payne out of Auburn. He's a player that's sort of flying under the radar because just like Amir Abdullah, he's 5'9" and 3/8, maybe 200 pounds. But the reality is the way he runs. I mean, Auburn had to establish a running game to play this year, and he was able to do that. He was a 3-down back. He blocked. He ran. He took what defenses gave him. He was active in the passing game, and he can explode through a hole in a straight run blocking system. And my personal opinion, he's another player, maybe with some work, but he's another player that if a team needed to bring him on board to carry a decent load, I think he's one that could do it. I don't know. Do you have anything to add, Jim or Keith?
Well, I was going to say Johnson has become, back to David Johnson. I think he's legitimately the number 3 running back in this draft. Him or the kid from Boise State that, totally honest, I can't name Jay something. But Johnson, I think, is, especially after his Senior Bowl performance, is put his name up in the, as the number 3 running back in this draft, and pretty impressive from a kid who played at 1AA school.
Were you referring to Jay? I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Ajayi or a Jay?
Yeah, I think that's the guy.
Boise State.
It's between him and Johnson that I've seen in most rankings. So take it for what you want. But Johnson looks like he can play with the big boys, and 1AA isn't bad football. It's not a huge drop off. I mean, it's a drop off obviously, but they play pretty good football. Being in Minnesota, I see a lot of North Dakota State, and they've won the national championship, I think 3 or 4 years in a row now. So, and I think he actually played pretty well against North Dakota State, who had a tough defense this year.
Keith, have anything to add?
Not about individual players and all, but the running back position is just not what it used to be as far as what teams view it as. I mean, I'm looking at a mock draft on draftbreakdown.com, a post-combine draft, and Gordon is the 29th pick in this draft. And I know Gurley was injured and all that, so that's going to hurt his stock and everything, but teams just don't care about the running back position like they used to. So I guess it's a little low-rent analysis on my part, but it's just seeing just where these players are projected And, the workhorse running back is gone. The RBC is in effect.
I don't know that I completely agree with you. I don't think the workhorse running back is completely gone. And I think teams are going to recognize how important it is to have one back that can tote the rock 225 to 275 times a year. But the problem is, if you're a running back, there's so many good running backs right now, and they keep coming out of college. And if you're a guy like Reggie Bush today who got released, you may not necessarily sign on with the team right away, because the reality is teams are going to look at a 29-year-old running back and say, well, if he's available after the draft, maybe let's consider him. Now, I don't necessarily think that will be the case with Reggie Bush, but it could be, and there's reason for it to be. So anyway, guys, that gets us to our break. To all our listeners out there, this is Jim Sarantias from thefantasygreek.com. You're listening to thefantasygreek.com's NFL Football Power Hour on Late Night Sports Radio. We'll be back right after the break.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
I'm not sure what this music is, but I guess it's the kind of music that Keith Grieve of 87 Sports Fans thinks this show should have. I'm Jim Sarantis of thefantasygreek.com, and you are listening to the fantasygreek.com's NFL Football Power Hour, where I am joined by, as I mentioned, the lovely Keith Grieve and Jim Widener of thefantasygreek.com. We just talked a half hour of NFL draft prospect talk, and it was pretty good. But we're not done yet. With 13 days to go till free agency opens, I'm going to pick Jim and Keith's brains a little bit about some of the free agents that are out there, as well as how some of the teams might go. And, boy, I guess where do we start here? Why don't we look at some of the quarterbacks? It seems to be the logical place to go. And we've got a couple, Josh McCown and Mark Sanchez. Guys, what do you think about these two?
It's like trying to pick which puddle of vomit to lick.
Sort of like massaging a groin pull. Would that be it?
Yeah, so, right along those lines. Although it's debatable.
I would think watching them is kind of like getting a groin pull.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
I'll tell you, Sanchez was a little bit better this past year. We got to give him that.
Yeah, but better than bad doesn't always mean good, Jim. I like to use that phrase at the day job a lot.
Ooh.
I know, that was
no,
deep.
but seriously, I mean, look, there's some teams that we've identified as quarterback needy, and yet they all can't have them. I mean, you can go Bills, Browns, Texans, Rams, Eagles, Buccaneers. So two of those teams are going to get one of these two rookies, two of the best rookies that potentially could be starters this year, and four of them are going to be SOL. And let's see, the Browns, they really don't have a quarterback. The Rams have Sam Bradford, who's been injury prone. The Eagles, I mean, they have Nick Foles, but it doesn't sound like they're necessarily stuck on him. And the Bills have E.J. Manuel, and who knows what they're going to get out of him. So what do you think, Mark Sanchez or Josh McCown? Where do you think these two guys might end up?
There'll be a backup somewhere. I mean, honestly.
You don't think either could start for any of these teams we just mentioned?
No.
I watched Josh McCown last year. I mean, he got beat out by Mike Glennon at one point. I just, unless you want a veteran backup and you're going to start like Mariota or Winston, I don't. Yeah, more power. He visited Buffalo. I don't know.
Let me just try to put how bad these guys were in perspective. Okay, at Pro Football Focus, their ratings are cumulative. Okay, so they pile up as the season goes on. Okay, so quarterbacks that started every game and didn't miss any time for their teams got about around 1,100 snaps. Okay, Mark Sanchez and Josh McCown each had about 640 snaps apiece. Okay. Mark Sanchez was rated the 27th worst rated quarterback, and McCown was the 34th worst rated quarterback. The only in between the two, between Sanchez and McCown, are Kaepernick, Austin Davis, Jake Locker, Drew Stanton, Jay Cutler, Robert Griffin III. Not good company to be in. Not good company to be in.
Yeah, that sounds pretty bad.
Yeah.
So basically,
out of the two, I think Sanchez to me would be a very nice backup. You know, somebody who actually could come in and play if needed, like he did last year in Philadelphia. If I was him, I wouldn't leave Philly, but if they offered, anything, I wouldn't leave. McCown, he's mid. He had that one good year when Cutler went down. I don't see it. I mean, he was playing in the UFL like 2 years ago.
So would you start E.J. Manuel ahead of both these guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm of the
Okay.
of the position that E.J. Manuel should never have started on day one. He was rushed into this, and I don't think you're ready to throw out the baby with the bathwater just yet.
Okay, that's fair enough. So basically what you guys are saying is whoever signs either of these two players as free agents, whether it be Josh McCown or Mark Sanchez, you'd be off to the side going, Yes?
I'd be shaking my head.
Praying to God that they never see the field if they sign with your team.
All right, we've beaten this to death. We've beaten this one to death. Let's just move on. Let's go to running back. We've got a few good running backs out there, and I just picked two for tonight to talk about: Mark Ingram and C.J. Spiller. Assuming their home teams don't re-sign them, and at least Mark Ingram, it's not looking good, and he'll probably want to test free agency given the kind of season he had. And C.J. Spiller, who knows? What do you think about these two guys and where they might land with the teams that are probably in the market? Wow, there's several. I mean, many. Besides their home teams, the Jets, Patriots, Ravens, Colts, Chargers, Jaguars, Buccaneers, Falcons, Panthers, Cardinals, Cowboys. What do you guys think?
To me, Spiller is an interesting one. Returnability, effective out of the backfield, and can run the ball. I think he'd be a nice replacement in Detroit for Reggie Bush, who just was released today. I know that he was hurt last year and lost, I think, with a calf injury of some kind. And to me, I think that would be a very a good landing spot for him, and I think he could be a pretty good pickup.
That's an interesting landing spot because, when I was doing the article today on Reggie Bush's release, in my mind, I wanted to give Theo Riddick the production that Bush had lost from the previous season. But when I actually looked at Theo Riddick's numbers, it just wasn't the same. It wasn't anything near it. I mean, Riddick did not take Reggie Bush's place, but yet you have to think if the Lions don't make any substantial changes to the running back position, he'll likely be that second sort of change of pace back, maybe not at the level of Reggie Bush, but at least he'll be in that position. So I think Spiller to the Lions, that's pretty interesting. Keith, what do you think?
I think Mark Ingram is the more durable of the two. C.J. Spiller comes with some injury concerns. So again, if you sign, if you sign with Spiller, you can't be like, okay, we got C.J., we're good. There's got to be something more to go along with that. So Detroit would actually probably make more sense.
For C.J. Spiller, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I suppose if we want to look at a team that already has a back there, the Patriots could make sense for C.J. Spiller, depending how much money he's looking for. Possibly the Colts. The Buccaneers have a boatload of running backs, but they really need a premier running back.
I mean, Joique Bell. We're totally ignoring Joique Bell in Detroit, and I don't know whether we're ready to write him off either.
Oh, no, I think he'll be the premier guy. I mean, last year he had 223 touches. I don't think that number's going down.
Right.
So he'll be the starter, but if you're sort of looking for the second running back to get about 120 touches, I mean, C.J. Spiller, it seems to me, would be your guy.
Yeah, and he's a little bit faster, a little bit more elusive.
Yeah. Where Mark Ingram, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say with Ingram, the fact that, he doesn't have, except for if you go back to Alabama, but where, when he won the Heisman, he hasn't had too many carries, I don't think, with New Orleans because they break down their carries in a committee type situation. So it's getting somebody who's been overly abused his first couple seasons in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been hurt. I think there was a time where he actually fell out of favor in the eyes of Sean Payton. I don't know that that's ever been official, but it certainly seemed that he was being declared inactive when he was out. I mean, my understanding was he's ready to play and suddenly declared inactive. So anyway, let's put that to the side. And, if he's a premier running back, I mean, there's teams that need one. The Falcons come to mind. The Ravens come to mind. The Panthers, I don't think they're going to get away with Jonathan Stewart. Cardinals could use somebody ahead of Andre Ellington.
Both of those guys haven't been the healthiest.
No, that's true, but Ingram did have the better season last year and seemed to be the healthier of the two.
Yeah.
So
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
You'll give me that. Thanks. I appreciate that. Let's move on. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, Ingram to Atlanta seems like a good fit. Now, unless Atlanta looks at if Gurley or Gordon slides into the second, it's a possibility there, and just go with the rookie instead of Ingram. But Atlanta would be a nice fit for him.
Atlanta needs somebody.
That's a good point.
They need somebody. They need. I know everybody's sort of looking at Devonta Freeman I'm not sure that he can last an entire season. Certainly, they didn't play him in a way last year where we would have learned that. So, to actually have a traditional running back who can get 220 carries and make Freeman more of your 120 to 150 guy, that to me makes a lot of sense. Well, moving on. I'm watching the time, and I think we've got about 15 minutes left. I want to get to a few more players, and certainly I want to get to wide receivers, and especially this guy that I'm about to mention, because I think he's one of the best wide receivers out there, and that's assuming Dez Bryant stays in Dallas, and that's Jeremy Maclin. And right behind him, I like Torrey Smith. What do you guys think about these two, given these teams that seem to have needed that position, which include the Browns, the Ravens, the Jaguars, the Broncos, the Chiefs, the Raiders, Cowboys, Eagles, Panthers, 49ers, Rams?
Well, go ahead, Jim. You lead the way on this. I ran out of breadcrumbs.
Let's see. I actually am a fan of Torrey Smith. I think that when he was drafted out of Maryland, he was more of a speedster, and I think he's become a very nice wide receiver, well-rounded in the league. Both these, Maclin and Smith, I would have a hard time believing that both of their current teams, would let them go. I'd be shocked if the Eagles did. I wrote for thefantasygreek.com that I thought that Maclin would be a nice fit in Minnesota. For Torrey Smith, I think he'd be for quite a few teams in the league. San Francisco. He's only 26 years old, so I think he'd be a nice pickup for San Francisco. Besides, I don't think Crabtree his potential, and Anquan Bolden isn't getting any younger, so it'd be a nice pickup for them, and I think that would be a good landing spot for him.
So you think any teams out there that need a wide receiver, Maclin is certainly he's one of those guys that everybody should be in on him.
I don't know if you throw out Dez Bryant, is the fact that I think he might be the top wide receiver out there, Maclin. I don't know why Philly would, unless his demands are too high. I think another good spot for him would be St. Louis. I don't know, Tavon Austin is more of a slot guy. Kenny Britt, I stayed out of trouble this last year, so that's a positive, but I don't know how, productive he was. So
he's a free agent though. So here, let me real quick, just for you guys and for our listeners out there, on the fantasygreek.com, our top 10 free agent wide receivers include Dez Bryant, Demaryius Thomas, in this order: Dez Bryant, Demaryius Thomas, Randall Cobb, Jeremy Maclin, Torrey Smith, Michael Crabtree, Cecil Shorts, Kenny Britt, Hakeem Nicks, and Eddie Royal.
Yeah, not much to go around there.
Yeah, I mean, after
those top wide receivers, to me, I don't know how their current employers would let them walk. I follow the Packers really tightly, and Randall Cobb, it doesn't sound demanding an excessive amount of money. I just would have a hard time believing that Ted Thompson and especially Aaron Rodgers would want to see him leave. So in Dez Bryant, I think Dallas is a perfect spot for him, and Demaryius Thomas, I totally forgot about him, and I've heard his name mentioned linked with the Jets. So I don't know, it'll be interesting.
Jeremy Maclin, 15th in the league in yards per route run for Philadelphia. Only one drop the entire season. One drop.
That's amazing.
So and he was targeted downfield quite a bit. So, it's again, I don't understand why Philly would let him go. It's not like they have Deshaun Jackson to rely on anymore. Once you never realize how much you need a receiver until you don't have one sometimes. The same thing with the Ravens. Torrey Smith, do you really believe Steve Smith's going to be able to keep this up forever? I mean, I'd be trying to keep some kind of young set of legs on that roster as long as possible.
And Keith, I hear you, but I think Ozzie Newsome was quoted earlier today saying, we can't sign everybody. We can't break the bank on everybody. We can't let every single player that's our free agent, command the kind of money that they all want. We can't pay, or we cannot pay them all.
Right. And
so at some point,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say they have to make choices.
Yeah, there's a little risk reward there, and again, I've said it multiple times. I don't think that you can compensate for the lack of an X receiver.
I think that's perfect. I think that's perfect, Keith, because you look at if Kelvin Benjamin wouldn't have panned out for the Panthers, look at what they would have started at wide receiver last year.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, you can't go in with Joe Smith or as your wide receiver. You gotta. Sometimes you gotta overspend. I mean, it's just that's the way it is. It's unfortunate. It's like anything in life. But to let Torrey Smith walk, I don't know how that helps your team at all. And there's got to be other places you can shortcut because the passing game is so important in the pro game right now. And to let good receivers leave,
Now the franchise tag for the position is right around $12 million. I think slightly higher. So I mean, for example, Randall Cobb, if they can't work out a long-term deal and he's franchised, he's going to get $12 million, and he'll be in the top 5. One of the top 5 paid Packers on the team. Do you think Ted Thompson would be willing to live with that decision?
No, just the way he runs things. I don't know even the last player he franchised. I really don't. I think the fact that I would imagine that they're working around the clock right now to try to get him signed before he hits free agency. I've read that Oakland might be interested in him, and they have the money to spend. So I think the big thing is, and maybe for a lot of these teams, is to lock these guys up. I think the only one I would imagine that would place the franchise tag would be the Cowboys with Dez Bryant.
Yeah, with Dez, I think they'll get a long-term deal done. If I could see them franchising DeMarco Murray, that would be a guy to franchise.
I agree.
Now, the wild card in that would be Adrian Peterson.
Correct.
Well, yeah, I suppose. I mean, if you can't get DeMarco Murray, then AP is your next guy if you can get him out of Minnesota. But AP is still, I think, I'd have to pull up his contract, but I think he's due $14 million this year.
Yeah, I living in Minnesota it's been the big talk on sports radio. It's quite the drama. There was an article on ESPN.com about him stating that he doesn't feel coming back to Minnesota and that they didn't stand by him as much during his ordeal last year. So, I mean, he might agree to restructure, take a pay cut once he's traded, but we'll see what happens. I mean, to me, you'd want to have a younger running back in DeMarco Murray. As big of a stud as Peterson is, he did have major knee surgery just 2 years ago, even though he rushed for over 2,000 yards when he came back. But that, to me, would be the wild card with Murray. And again, we talk about devaluing the running back. Is what's the market out there for running backs?
Right.
Not to get back on running backs, but
no, but I think your point is well taken. But a guy like Adrian Peterson and DeMarco Murray, you cannot compare them to any of the college players we've talked about yet. You can't compare them to Mark Ingram, CJ Spiller, because they're at a whole different level. And all you can really do is compare them to themselves. We all know they're about a $12 million, $14 million a year player. And you're just going to have to take that with the risk that any running back brings to the table by virtue of simply playing the position that they play.
Yeah.
But this is a Cowboys team. They're in it. They're a team that we'll be talking about possibly being in the Super Bowl this year and even next year. Guys?
Would agree.
I'd have to agree. I think that if they would have got past Green Bay, I think they had a good shot of beating Seattle. So
if they just called that reception a reception, it would have.
Don't get him started. Oh my gosh! I took a chance on poking the bear with the little picture I tweeted him last week when I was working on my Cowboys off-season colonoscopy.
Could you please give people some sort of background to what we're talking about? Because
we
have no
had
idea.
a 10-minute just tirade by Jim on the Monday night show.
It was not 10 minutes.
It felt like 10 minutes. about how Jim believed that ball never touched the ground. And I'm just like, dude, it did. And it went back and forth. So finally, I found a definitive picture last week while I was looking up.
Not definitive?
It was definitive. That ball is touching the grass in that picture.
Nope.
It so is. Oh, my God.
You're blind.
You are amazing right now.
I'm
All
gonna
right,
I'm gonna
listen.
side with Jim on this, and I'm even a Packer. I follow the Packers. That I don't know how that's not a reception, but that's just my 2 cents, Keith.
The ball touched the ground.
All right. Look, let's not get caught up on it. We'll work this out some other way. Keith, you'll just let me win. All right. So I want to quickly.
You don't know me as well as you think.
Yeah. So with probably 5 minutes left to go in the show, one of the positions that intrigues me, it always intrigues me because of how it's been treated the last few years, as well as the caliber of players that sort of are playing the position, is tight end. Two of really just marquee tight ends, and one of them more so in terms of his body of work, are available as free agents. And I only have, I want to say, 3 teams that have an outright need. And those teams are the Browns, Broncos, and Falcons. And the 2 free agents I want to talk about are Julius Thomas and Cameron Jordan. Gentlemen, what do you think? Or Jordan Cameron, excuse me.
How happy would Matt Ryan be in Atlanta if he could get Julius Thomas?
I think
mean,
it's a great landing spot.
I think it is too. I think that, Matt Ryan, when Tony Gonzalez retired, he didn't have that tight end. I don't even know who started at tight end for the Falcons.
Tuilolo.
What's that?
Levine Tuilolo or something like that was his name.
Toilolo.
Wow.
I can't even say it.
It's amazing that you know that.
I just did their off-season colonoscopy for 87.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. To me, that would be a great landing spot. And I don't, Demaryius Thomas and Julius Thomas are both. I don't know how they can afford both. The Broncos. I think it would be a good landing spot in Atlanta. Now, Jordan Cameron's interesting because the fact that he's coming off a tough year or an off year, but again, that quarterback situation in Cleveland is that was something that was worth seeing. Holy cow! So, I think Jordan Cameron's kind of an undervalued free agent and could be a good pickup by a team.
Now, the Falcons, present, their cap number is $120 million, close to 121, and if you take $142, $143 million cap, they've got 20-some million to play with as of right now. It's not bad.
Be very interesting.
They got room. It just,
You have to ask yourself how much is Julius Thomas and how much is Peyton Manning.
Well, and I think you've also got to ask yourself, really, the Falcons have to rebuild their defense. And would you rather spend monies doing that and hold off on the tight end, or maybe even look to the draft to draft the tight end? Because Toilolo clearly is more of a blocking tight end, or at least that's how he's been used. And you've got some pretty good tight ends in the draft, especially if Max Williams falls to him, which I don't think would be I think it's more than possible since they have the number 8 pick in the first round. I don't know that they'll go. You know what? They won't draft him at 8. That's too early.
Yeah, it's
Toilolo with the 3rd highest drop rate among tight ends last year. 16.
I think the only.
Sorry, go ahead. 16% of the time he dropped the ball.
I think they only threw it to him like 30, 40 times. That's what
49 targets, 31 receptions, 6 drops.
There you go.
37
There
were
you go.
catchable.
Wow. So he has boxes on his hands when he's trying to catch
Pretty
a
much.
football.
Pretty much. Trying to
Yeah.
play the tight end position with Kleenex boxes.
Yeah. Well, I'm tempted to try and shoot in let's knock off another player or two or defensive player, but how much time we got left?
38 seconds.
Oh, well, there we go. We made it as usual, gentlemen. Made it as usual. Well, folks, for Keith Grieve and Jim Widener of the FantasyGreek.com, Keith Grieve of 87 Sports Fans. I'm Jim Sarantias, FantasyGreek.com. You've been listening to the FantasyGreek.com's NFL Football Power Hour. Catch us every Wednesday night from 10 p.m. Eastern to 11 p.m. Eastern. Catch us every single week. Same place, same bad channel. No matter what they say, you're the best. Good night, good night, good night.
Turn out the lights. The party's over.